The Vienna Circle of Logical Empiricism was a group of philosophers and scientists drawn from the natural and social sciences, logic and mathematics who met regularly from 1924 to 1936 at the University of Vienna, chaired by Moritz Schlick. In 2015, as part of the 650th anniversary, the University of Vienna organized an exhibition on the Vienna Circle. Overview: among the members of the inner circle were Schlick, Hans Hahn, Philipp Frank, Otto Neurath, Rudolf Carnap, Herbert Feigl, Richard von Mises, Karl Menger, Kurt Paragraph Dell, Friedrich Waismann, Felix Kaufmann, Viktor Kraft and Edgar Zilsel. In addition, the Vienna Circle was occasionally visited by Alfred Tarski, Hans Reichenbach, Carl Gustav Hempel, Willard van Orman Quine, Ernest Nagel, Alfred Jules Ayer and Frank P. Ramsey. Ludwig Wittgenstein and Karl Popper were in close contact to the Vienna Circle, but never participated in the meetings of the Schlick Circle. The philosophical position of the Vienna Circle was called logical empiricism, logical positivism or neopositivism. It was influenced by Ernst Mach, David Hilbert, French conventionalism, Gottlob Frege, Bertrand Russell, Ludwig Wittgenstein and Albert Einstein. The Vienna Circle was pluralistic and committed to the ideals of enlightenment. It was unified by the aim of making philosophy scientific with the help of modern logic. Main topics were foundational debates in the natural and social sciences, logic and mathematics, the modernization of empiricism by modern logic, the search for an empiricist criterion of meaning, the critique of metaphysics and the unification of the sciences in the unity of science. The Vienna Circle appeared in public with the publication of various book series Schriften zur wissenschaftlichen Weltauffassung, Einheitswissenschaft and the journal Erkenntnisse and the organization of international conferences in Prague, Kaliningrad, Paris, Copenhagen, Cambridge, UK and Cambridge, Mass. Its public profile was provided by the Ernst Mach Society, through which members of the Vienna Circle sought to popularize their ideas in the context of programs for national education in Vienna. During the era of Austro-Fascism and after the annexation of Austria by Nazi Germany, most members of the Vienna Circle were forced to emigrate. The murder of Schlick in 1936 by a former student put an end to the Vienna Circle in Austria. The Vienna Circle's influence on 20th-century philosophy, especially philosophy of science and analytic philosophy, is immense up to the present day. History of the Vienna Circle. The history and development of the Vienna Circle shows various stages. The A-OE First Vienna Circle The prehistory of the Vienna Circle began with meetings on the philosophy of science and epistemology from 1908 on, promoted by Philipp Frank, Hans Hahn and Otto Neurath. Hans Hahn, the oldest of the three, was a mathematician. He received his degree in mathematics in 1902. Afterwards he studied under the direction of Ludwig Boltzmann in Vienna and David Hilbert, Felix Klein and Hermann Minkowski in Paragraph-Tingen. In 1905 he received the habilitation in mathematics. He taught at Innsbruck and Vienna. Otto Neurath studied mathematics, political economy, and history in Vienna and Berlin. From 1907 to 1914 he taught in Vienna at the Neuen Wiener Handelsakademie. Neurath married Olga, Hahn's sister, in 1911. Philipp Frank, the youngest of the group, studied physics at Paragraph-Tingen and Vienna with Ludwig Boltzmann, David Hilbert and Felix Klein. From 1912, he held the chair of theoretical physics in the German University in Prague. Their meetings were held in Viennese coffeehouses from 1907 onward. Frank remembered. A number of further authors were discussed in the meetings, such as Brentano, Meinong, Helmholtz, Hertz, Husserl, Freud, Russell, Whitehead, Lenin and Frege. Presumably the meetings stopped in 1912, when Frank went to Prague, to hold the chair of theoretical physics left vacant by Albert Einstein. Hahn left Vienna during World War I and returned in 1921. The formative years. The formation of the Vienna Circle began with Hahn returning to Vienna in 1921. Together with the mathematician Kurt Reidemeister, he organized seminars on Ludwig Wittgenstein Unregistered trademark S Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus and on Whitehead and Rosella Unregistered trademark S Principia Mathematica. With the support of Hahn, Moritz Schlick was appointed to the chair of philosophy of the inductive sciences at the University of Vienna in 1922. The chair formerly held by Ernst Mach and partly by Boltzmann. Schlick had already published two important works, Romanzeit und die Gegenwartscurrency RTIGEN Physik in 1917 and Allgemeine Kenntnislehre in 1918. Immediately after Schlick Unregistered trademark S arrival in Vienna, he organized discussions with the mathematicians around Hahn. In 1924 Schlick Unregistered trademark S students Friedrich Waismann and Herbert Feigl suggested to their teacher a sort of regular Evening Circle From winter term 1924 on, regular meetings were held at the Institute of Mathematics in Vienna. Unregistered trademark S Boltzmann Gas 5 on personal invitation by Schlick. These discussions can be seen as the beginning of the Vienna Circle. The non-public phase of the Vienna Circle. The Schlick Circle the group that met from 1924 on was quite diverse and included not only recognized scientists such as Schlick, Hahn, Kraft, Philipp Frank, Neurath, Olga Hahn-Neurath, and Heinrich Gompertz, but also younger students and doctoral candidates. In addition, the group invited foreign visitors. In 1926 Schlick and Hahn arranged to bring Rudolf Carnap to the University of Vienna as a Privatdozent. Carnap's logical structure of the world was intensely discussed in the circle. Also Wittgenstein Unregistered trademark S Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus was read out loud and discussed. From 1927 on, personal meetings were arranged between Wittgenstein and Schlick, Waismann, Carnap and Feigl. The public phase Schlick Circle and Verein Mach In 1928 the Verein Mach was founded, with Schlick as its chairman. The aim of the society was the spreading of a scientific world conception through public lectures that were in large part held by members of the Vienna Circle. In 1929 the Vienna Circle made its first public appearance under this name invented by Neurath, with the publication of its manifesto Wissenschaftliche Weltauffassung. Der Wiener Kreis. The pamphlet is dedicated to Schlick, and its preface was signed by Hahn, Neurath and Carnap. The manifesto was presented at the Tagung für Erkenntnislehre der Wissenschaften in autumn 1929, organized by the Vienna Circle together with the Berlin Circle. This conference was the first international appearance of logical empiricism and the first of a number of conferences: Kaliningrad, Prague, Paris, Copenhagen, Cambridge, UK, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Chicago. In 1930 the Vienna Circle and the Berlin Society took over the journal Annalen der Philosophie and made it the main journal of logical empiricism under the title Erkenntnis, ed. by Carnap and Reichenbach. Besides, the Vienna Circle published a number of book series, Schriften zur wissenschaftlichen Weltauffassung, Einheitswissenschaft, and later the International Encyclopedia of Unified Science. Disintegration, emigration, internationalization. Since the beginning of the 1930s first signs of disintegration appeared for political and racist reasons. Herbert Feigl left Austria in 1930. Carnap was appointed to a chair at Prague University in 1931 and left for Chicago in 1935. 1934 marks an important break. Hahn died after surgery. Neurath fled to Holland because of the victory of Austro-Fascism in the Austrian Civil War, following which the Ernst Mach Society was dissolved for political reasons by the Schuschnigg regime. The murder of Moritz Schlick by the former student Hans Nelber paragraph CK for political and personal reasons in 1936 set an end to the meetings of the Schlick Circle. Some members of the circle such as Kraft, Waismann, Zilsel, Menger and Gompertz continued to meet occasionally. But the annexation of Austria to Nazi Germany in 1938 meant the definite end of the activities of the Vienna Circle in Austria. With the immigration went along the internationalization of logical empiricism. Many former members of the Vienna Circle and der Berlin Circle emigrated to the Anglosphere where they had an immense influence on the development of philosophy of science. The Unity of Science movement for the construction of an international encyclopedia of unified science, promoted mainly by Neurath, Carnap, and Morris, is symptomatic of the internationalization of logical empiricism, organizing numerous international conferences and the publication of the International Encyclopedia of Unified Science. Overview of the members of the Vienna Circle apart from the central figures of the Schlick Circle, the question of membership in the Vienna Circle is in many cases unsettled. The partition into a members and a were those sympathetic to the Vienna Circle produced in the Manifesto from 1929 is representative only of a specific moment in the development of the Circle. Depending on the criteria used, there are different possible distributions in a Circle and a periphery. In the following list, the a Circle is defined using the criterion of regular attendance. The a periphery comprises occasional visitors, foreign visitors and leading intellectual figures who stood in regular contact with the Circle. Inner Circle: Gustav Bergmann, Rudolf Carnap, Herbert Feigl, Philipp Frank, Kurt Gauer. Paragraph Del, Hans Hahn, Olga Hahn. Neurath, Bar. Copyright La Jude Felix Kaufmann, Victor Kraft, Karl Menger, Richard von Mises, Otto Neurath, Rose Rand, Joseph Scher. Currency Cchter, Moritz Schlick, Friedrich Waismann, Edgar Zilsel. Periphery: Alfred Jules Ayer, Egon Brunswick, Karl Barwon Courtellaire, Jos Frank, Els Frankel Brunswick, Heinrich Gompertz, Carl Gustav Hempel, Erno Kahler, Hans Kelsen, Charles W. Morris, Arness, Karl Raimund Popper, Willard van Orman Quine, Frank P. Ramsey, Hans Reichenbach, Kurt Riedmeister, Alfred Tarski, Olga Torski Todd, Ludwig Wittgenstein. Reception in the United States and the United Kingdom. The spread of logical positivism in the United States occurred throughout the 1920s and 1930s. In 1929 and in 1932, Schlick was a visiting professor at Stanford, while Feigl, who immigrated to the United States in 1930, became lecturer and professor at the University of Iowa. The definite diffusion of logical positivism in the United States was due to Karl Hempel, Hans Reichenbach, Rudolf Carnap, Philipp Frank, and Herbert Feigl, who emigrated and taught in the United States. Another link to the United States is Willard van Orman Quine, who traveled in 1932 and 1933 as a Sheldon traveling fellow to Vienna, Prague, and Warsaw. Moreover, American semiotician and philosopher Charles W. Morris helped many German and Austrian philosophers emigrate to the United States, including Rudolf Carnap, in 1936. In the United Kingdom it was Alfred Jules Ayer who acquainted the British academia with the work of the Vienna Circle with his book Language, Truth, and Logic. Karl Popper was also important for the reception and critique of their work, even though he never participated in the meetings of the Vienna Circle. Topics and debates: the Vienna Circle cannot be assigned one single philosophy. First, there existed a plurality of philosophical positions within the Circle, and second, members often changed their views fundamentally in the course of time and in reaction to discussions in the Circle. It thus seems more convenient to speak of with philosophies of the Vienna Circle. However, some central topics and debates can be identified. The Manifesto it states the scientific world conception of the Vienna Circle, which is characterized essentially by two features. First, it is empiricist and positivist, there is knowledge only from experience. Second, the scientific world conception is marked by the application of a certain method, namely logical analysis. Logical analysis is the method of clarification of philosophical problems. It makes an extensive use of symbolic logic and distinguishes the Vienna Circle empiricism from earlier versions. The task of philosophy lies in the clarification through the method of logical analysis of problems and assertions. Logical analysis shows that there are two different kinds of statements. One kind includes statements reducible to simpler statements about the empirically given. The other kind includes statements which cannot be reduced to statements about experience and thus they are devoid of meaning. Metaphysical statements belong to this second kind and therefore they are meaningless. Hence many philosophical problems are rejected as pseudo-problems which arise from logical mistakes, while others are reinterpreted as empirical statements and thus become the subject of scientific inquiries. One source of the logical mistakes that are at the origins of metaphysics is the ambiguity of natural language. Ordinary language, for instance, uses the same part of speech, the substantive, for things as well as for qualities, relations, and processes. Therefore it misleads one into a thing-like conception of functional concepts. Another source of mistakes is the notion that thinking can either lead to knowledge out of its own resources without using any empirical material, or at least arrive at new contents by an inference from given states of affair. Synthetic knowledge a priori is rejected by the Vienna Circle. Mathematics, which at a first sight seems an example of necessarily valid synthetic knowledge derived from pure reason alone, has instead a tautological character, that is, its statements are analytical statements, thus very different from Kantian synthetic statements. The only two kinds of statements accepted by the Vienna Circle are synthetic statements a posteriori and analytic statements a priori. However, the persistence of metaphysics is connected not only with logical mistakes but also with social and economical struggles. Metaphysics and theology are allied to traditional social forms, while the group of people who faces modern times, rejects these views and takes its stand on the ground of empirical sciences. Thus the struggle between metaphysics and scientific world conception is not only a struggle between different kinds of philosophies, but it is also and perhaps primarily a struggle between different political, social, and economical attitudes. Of course, as the manifesto itself acknowledged, not every adherent of the scientific world conception will be a fighter. Many historians of the Vienna Circle see in the latter sentence an implicit reference to a contrast between the so-called left wing of the Vienna Circle, mainly represented by Neurath and Carnap, and Moritz Schlick. The aim of the left wing was to facilitate the penetration of the scientific world conception in the forms of personal and public life, in education, upbringing, architecture, and the shaping of economic and social life. In contrast, Schlick was primarily interested in the theoretical study of science and philosophy. Perhaps the sentence "some, glad of solitude, will lead a withdrawn existence on the icy slopes of logic" is an ironic reference to Schlick. The manifesto lists Walter Dibslav, Jos Frank, Kurt Grelling, Hasso Harkarency Rlen, Erno Kahler, Heinrich Louis, F. P. Ramsey, Hans Reichenbach, Kurt Riedmeister, and Edgar Zilsel as people sympathetic to the Vienna Circle, and Albert Einstein, Bertrand Russell, and Ludwig Wittgenstein as its leading representatives. Unified science equals, the final goal pursued by the Vienna Circle was unified science, that is the construction of a constitutive system in which every legitimate statement is reduced to the concepts of lower level which refer directly to the given experience. The endeavor is to link and harmonize the achievements of individual investigators in their various fields of science. From this aim follows the search for clarity, neatness, and for a symbolic language that eliminates the problems arising from the ambiguity of natural language. The Vienna Circle published a collection, called Einheitswissenschaft, edited by Rudolf Carnap, Philipp Frank, Hans Hahn, Otto Neurath, Jürgen Jurgensen and Charles W. Morris, whose aim was to present a unified vision of science. After the publication in Europe of 7 monographs from 1933 to 1939, the collection was dismissed, because of the problems arising from the World War II. In 1938 a new series of publications started in USA. It was the International Encyclopedia of Unified Science, an ambitious project never completed devoted to unified science. Only the first section, Foundations of the Unity of Sciences, was published. It contains 2 volumes for a total of 20 monographs published from 1938 to 1969. As remembered by Rudolf Carnap and Charles Morris in the preface to the 1969 edition of the International Encyclopedia of Unified Science. Thomas Kuhn's well-known work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, was published in this encyclopedia in 1962. as the number 2 in the second volume. See also Unity of Science. Equals the critique of metaphysics equals, the attitude of Vienna Circle towards metaphysics is well expressed by Carnap in the article Überwindung der Metaphysik durch logische Analyse der Sprachliche Volume 2, 1932. A language Euro says Carnap Euro consists of a vocabulary, that is, a set of meaningful words, and a syntax, that is, a set of rules governing the formation of sentences from the words of the vocabulary. Pseudo statements, that is, sequences of words that at first sight resemble statements but in reality have no meaning, are formed in two ways: either meaningless words occur in them, or they are formed in an invalid syntactical way. According to Carnap, pseudo-statements of both kinds occur in metaphysics. A word W has a meaning if two conditions are satisfied. First, the mode of the occurrence of W in its elementary sentence form must be fixed. Secondly, if W occurs in an elementary sentence S, it is necessary to give an answer to the following questions: what sentences is S deducible from, and what sentences are deducible from S? Under what conditions is S supposed to be true, and under what conditions false? How is S verified? What is the meaning of S? Carnap, The Elimination of Metaphysics Through Logical Analysis of Language in Sarkar, Sartre, Cit., pages 12. An example offered by Carnap concerns the word arthropod. The sentence form "the thing X is an arthropod" is an elementary sentence form that is derivable from X is an animal, X has a segmented body, and X has jointed legs. Conversely, these sentences are derivable from "the thing X is an arthropod." Thus the meaning of the word arthropod is determined. According to Carnap, many words of metaphysics do not fulfill these requirements and thus they are meaningless. As an example, Carnap considers the word principle. This word has a definite meaning, if the sentence X is the principle of Y is supposed to be equivalent to the sentence Y exists by virtue of X, or Y arises out of X. The latter sentence is perfectly clear: Y arises out of X when X is invariably followed by Y, and the invariable association between X and Y is empirically verifiable. Buter Euro says Carnap Euro metaphysicians are not satisfied with this interpretation of the meaning of principle. They assert that no empirical relation between X and Y can completely explain the meaning of X as the principle of Y, because there is something that cannot be grasped by means of the experience, something for which no empirical criterion can be specified. It is the lacking of any empirical terrain Euro says Carnap Euro that deprives of meaning the word principle when it occurs in metaphysics. Therefore, metaphysical pseudo-statements such as water is the principle of the world, or the spirit is the principle of the world are void of meaning because a meaningless word occurs in them. However, there are pseudo-statements in which occur only meaningful words. These pseudo-statements are formed in a counter-syntactical way. An example is the word sequence Caesar is a prime number. Every word has a definite meaning, but the sequence has no meaning. The problem is that prime number is a predicate of numbers, not a predicate of human beings. In the example the nonsense is evident. However, in natural language the rules of grammar do not prohibit the formation of analogous meaningless word sequences that are not so easily detectable. In the grammar of natural languages, every sequence of the kind X is Y, where X is a noun and Y is a predicate, is acceptable. In fact, in the grammar there is no distinction between predicate which can be affirmed of human beings and predicate which can be affirmed of numbers. So Caesar is a general, and Caesar is a prime number are both well-formed, in contrast for example with Caesar is and, which is ill-formed. In a logically constructed language Euro says Carnap Euro a distinction between the various kinds of predicate is specified, and pseudo-statements as Caesar is a prime number are ill-formed. Now, and this is the main point of Carnap's argument, metaphysical statements in which meaningless words do not occur, are indeed meaningless because they are formed in a way which is admissible in natural languages, but not in logically constructed languages. Carnap attempts to indicate the most frequent sources of errors from which metaphysical pseudo-statements can arise. One source of mistakes is the ambiguity of the verb to be, which is sometimes used as a copula, and sometimes to designate existence. The latter statement incorrectly suggests a predicative form, and thus it suggests that existence is a predicate. Only modern logic, with the introduction of an explicit sign to designate existence, which occurs only in statements such as, never is a predicate, has shown that existence is not a predicate, and thus has revealed the logical error from which pseudo-statements such as cogito, ergo sum has arisen. Another source of mistakes is type confusions, in which a predicate of a kind is used as a predicate of another kind. For example, the pseudo-statements "we know the nothing" is analogous to "we know the rain," but while the latter is well-formed, the former is ill-formed, at least in a logically constructed language, because nothing is incorrectly used as a noun. In a formal language, nothing only means, such as there is nothing which is outside that is, and thus nothing never occurs as a noun or as a predicate. According to Carnap, although metaphysics has no theoretical content, it does have content. Metaphysical pseudo-statements express the attitude of a person towards life, and this is the role of metaphysics. He compares it to an art like lyrical poetry. The metaphysician works with the medium of the theoretical. He confuses art with science, attitude towards life with knowledge, and thus produces an unsatisfactory and inadequate work. Metaphysicians are musicians without musical ability. Congresses and publications. The Vienna Circle was very active in advertising their new philosophical ideas. Several congresses on epistemology and philosophy of science were organized, with the help of the Berlin Circle. There were some preparatory congresses, Prague, Karl-Paragraph-Königsberg, Prague, and then the first Congress on Scientific Philosophy held in Paris, followed by congresses in Copenhagen, Paris, Cambridge, England, United Kingdom, Cambridge, Massachusetts, United States. The Karl-Paragraph-Königsberg Congress was very important, for Kurt Karl-Paragraph-Döhl announced that he had proven the completeness of first-order logic and the incompleteness of formal arithmetic. Another very interesting congress was the one held in Copenhagen, which was dedicated to quantum physics and causality. Between 1928 and 1937, the Vienna Circle published 10 books in a collection named Schriften zur wissenschaftlichen Weltauffassung, edited by Schlick and Frank. Karl Raimund Popper's book Logik der Forschung was published in this collection. 7 works were published in another collection, called Einheitswissenschaft. In 1930 Rudolf Carnap and Hans Reichenbach undertook the editorship of the journal Erkenntnis, which was published between 1930 and 1940. The following is the list of works published in the 2 collections edited by the Vienna Circle. Schriften zur wissenschaftlichen Weltauffassung, edited by Schlick and Frank, Richard von Mises, Wahrscheinlichkeit, Statistik und Wahrheit, 1928, Rudolf Carnap, Abriss der Logistik, 1929, Moritz Schlick, Fragen der Ethik, 1930, Otto Neurath, Empirische Soziologie, 1931, Philipp Frank, Das Kausalgesetz und seine Grenzen, 1932, Otto Kant, Zur Biologie der Ethik, 1932, Rudolf Carnap, Logische Syntax der Sprache, 1934, Karl Raimund Popper, Logik der Forschung, 1934, Josephsche Currency Cchter, Programme zu einer kritischen Grammatik, 1935, Viktor Kraft, Die Grundlagen einer Wissenschaftlichen, 1937. Einheitswissenschaft, edited by Carnap, Frank, Hahn, Neurath, Jurgensen, Morris, Hans Hahn, Logik, Mathematik und Naturkennen, 1933, Otto Neurath, Einheitswissenschaft und Psychology, 1933, Rudolf Carnap, Die Aufgabe der Wissenschaft Logik, 1934, Philipp Frank, Das und der mechanistischen Physik, 1935, Otto Neurath, Was bedeutet Rationalwissenschaftsbetrachtung, 1935, Otto Neurath, E. Brunswick, C. Hull, G. Manuri, J. Woger, Zur Enzyklopädie Currency der Einheitswissenschaft. Vortrag-Currency GE, 1938, Richard von Mises, Ernst Mach und die Empiristische Wissenschaftsauffassung G, 1939, these works are translated in Unified Science, the Vienna Circle monograph series originally edited by Otto Neurath, Kluwer, 1987. Monographs, arranged in chronological order, published in the International Encyclopedia of Unified Science, Otto Neurath, Niels Bohr, John Dewey, Bertrand Russell, Rudolf Carnap, Charles Morris, Encyclopedia and Unified Science, 1938, Volume 1 N1, Charles Morris, Foundations of the Theory of Signs, 1938, Volume 1 N2, Victor Lenzen, Procedures of Empirical Sciences, 1938, Volume 1 N5, Rudolf Carnap, Foundations of Logic and Mathematics, 1939, Volume 1 N3, Leonard Bloomfield, Linguistic Aspects of Science, 1939, Volume 1 N4, Ernest Nagel, Principles of the Theory of Probability. 1939, Volume 1 N6, John Dewey, Theory of Valuation, 1939, Volume 2 N4, Giorgio de Santillana and Edgar Zilsel, The Development of Rationalism and Empiricism, 1941, Volume 2 N8, Otto Neurath, Foundations of Social Sciences, 1944, Volume 2 N1, Joseph H. Woger, The Technique of Theory Construction, 1949, Volume 2 N5, Philip Frank, Foundations of Physics, 1946, Volume 1 N7, Erwin Finley Freundlich, Cosmology, 1951, Volume 1 N8, Jürgen Jurgensen, The Development of Logical Empiricism, 1951. Volume 2 N9, Egon Brunswick, The Conceptual Framework of Psychology, 1952, Volume 1 N10, Carl Hempel, Fundamentals of Concept Formation in Empirical Science, 1952, Volume 2 N7, Felix Mayunks, Foundations of Biology, 1955, Volume 1 N9, Abraham Adel, Science and the Structure of Ethics, 1961, Volume 2 N3, Thomas S. Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, 1962, Volume 2 N2, Gerard Tintner, Methodology of Mathematical Economics and Econometrics, 1968, Volume 2 N6, Herbert Feigl and Charles Morris, Bibliography and Index. 1969, Volume 2 N10. Institute Vienna Circle. In 1991 the Institute Vienna Circle was established in Vienna. It is dedicated to the work and influence of the Vienna Circle. In 2011 it was integrated in the University of Vienna as a subunit of the Faculty of Philosophy and Education. In 2015 the institute hosts the first international exhibition on the Vienna Circle in the main building of the University of Vienna. Bibliography. Primary literature Carnap, Rudolf. Ausbildung der Metaphysik durch Analyse des sprachlichen Erkenntnis, Volume 2, 1932, Neurath, Otto and Carnap, Rudolf and Morris, Charles W. Foundations of the Unity of Sciences, Volume 1, Chicago, The University of Chicago Press, 1969. Wissenschaftliche Weltauffassung. Der Wiener Kreis, 1929. English translation: A Scientific Conception of the World. The Vienna Circle and Sarka, Sartre, ed., The Emergence of Logical Empiricism, From 1900 to the Vienna Circle, New York, Garland Publishing, 1996, pages 321–340, Stadler, Friedrich and Bull, Thomas, Wissenschaftliche Weltauffassung. Der Wiener Kreis. HRSG. Vom Verein Ernst Mach. Reprint of the first edition. With translations into English, French, Spanish and Italian. Vienna, Springer, 2012. Star paragraph LTZNER, Michael and Bull, Thomas. Wiener Kreis. Text zur Wissenschaftlichen Weltauffassung. Minor, Hamburg, 2006, ISBN 3-7873-1811-9. Secondary literature Eyre, Alfred Jules. Language, Truth and Logic. London, Victor Gollancz, 1936. Eyre, Alfred Jules. Logical Positivism. Glencoe, Illinois, Free Press, 1959. Baron, Francesco. Il neopositivismo logico. Roma Bari, Laterza, 1986. Bergman, Gustav. The Metaphysics of Logical Positivism. New York, Longmans Green, 1954. Serrera, Ramon. Carnap and the Vienna Circle, Empiricism and Logical Syntax. Atlanta, Georgia, Rodopi, 1994. Dumba Paragraph CK, Christian. Natchwort. In Dumba Paragraph CK, Christian. Der Wiener Kreis Ostwa Currency HLTE Text. Stuttgart, Reclam pages 227 €244. Frank, Philip, Modern Science and Its Philosophy. Cambridge, 1949. Friedman, Michael, Reconsidering Logical Positivism. Cambridge, UK, Cambridge University Press, 1999. Gadol, Eugene T. Rationality and Science, a memorial volume for Moritz Schlick in celebration of the centennial of his birth. Wien, Springer, 1982. Game on it, Ludovico. La Nuova Filosofia della Natura in Germania. Torino, 1934. Gier, Ronald N. and Richardson, Alan W. Origins of Logical Empiricism. Minneapolis, University of Minnesota Press, 1997. Haller, Rudolf. Neopositivismus. Ein Historischein für One-Quarter-Rungen die Philosophie des Wiener Kreises. Wissenschaftliche Buchgesellschaft, Darmstadt, 1993, ISBN 3-534-06677-4. Kraft, Victor. The Vienna Circle, The Origin of Neo-Positivism, a Chapter in the History of Recent Philosophy. New York, Greenwood Press, 1953. Limbeck, Christoph and Stageler, Friedrich. The Vienna Circle. Texts and Pictures of an Exhibition. Ma 1/4 NSTER Berlin London 2015. ISBN 973-3-643-90649-6, McGuinness, Brian. Wittgenstein and the Vienna Circle, Conversations recorded by Friedrich Waismann. Trans. By Joachim Schult and Brian McGuinness. New York, Barnes & Noble Books, 1979. Paranai, Paolo. Salmon, Wesley C. Salmon, Merrilee H. Logical Empiricism: A Euro-Historical and Contemporary Perspectives, Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh Press, 2003. Reich, George. How the Cold War Transformed Philosophy of Science, to the Icy Slopes of Logic. New York, Cambridge University Press, 2005. Riescher, Nicholas. The Heritage of Logical Positivism. University Press of America, 1985. Richardson, Alan. A Euro-OE: The Scientific World Conception. Logical Positivism: A Euro, in T. Baldwin, The Cambridge History of Philosophy, 1870–1945, 2003, 391–400. Richardson, Alan and Ball, Thomas. The Cambridge Companion to Logical Empiricism. Cambridge, 2007. Salmon, Wesley and Walters, Geron, Logic, Language, and the Structure of Scientific Theories, Proceedings of the Carnap-Reichenbach Centennial, University of Constance, 21 Euro May 24, 1991, Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh Press, 1994. Saka, Sutra. The Emergence of Logical Empiricism, From 1900 to the Vienna Circle. New York, Garland Publishing, 1996. Saka, Sutra. Logical Empiricism at its Peak, Schlick, Carnap, and Neurath. New York, Garland Pub, 1996. Saka, Sutra. Logical Empiricism and the Special Sciences, Reichenbach, Feigl, and Nagel. New York, Garland Pub, 1996. Saka, Sutra. Decline and Obsolescence of Logical Empiricism, Carnap vs. Quine and the Critics. New York, Garland Pub, 1996. Saka, Sutra. The Legacy of the Vienna Circle, Modern Reappraisals. New York, Garland Pub, 1996. Spon, Wolfgang, Erkenntnis-orientated, a centennial volume for Rudolf Carnap and Hans Reichenbach, Boston, Kluwer Academic Publishers, 1991. Stadler, Friedrich. The Vienna Circle. Studies in the Origins, Development, and Influence of Logical Empiricism. New York, Springer, 2001. A Euro 2nd edition, Dordgt Springer, 2015. Stadler, Friedrich. The Vienna Circle and Logical Empiricism. Re-evaluation and Future Perspectives. Dordgt a Euro Boston a Euro London, Kluwer, 2003. Bull, Thomas. Vernunftkritik und Wissenschaft, Otto Neurath und der erste Wiener Kreis. Wien, New York 2000. Bull, Thomas, On the Austrian Roots of Logical Empiricism and Logical Empiricism, a Euro-Historical and Contemporary Perspectives, ed. Paolo Parini, Wesley C. Salmon, Merrilee H. Salmon, Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh Press, 2003, pages 76 a Euro 93. See also, Logical Positivism, Conventionalism, Formalism, Logicism, Analytic a Euro-Synthetic Distinction, Unity of Science. International Encyclopedia of Unified Science, Philosophy of Science, Analytic Philosophy, List of Austrian Intellectual Traditions. External links, Institute Vienna Circle, Vienna Circle Foundation Amsterdam, Thomas Bull, Vienna Circle, The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, The Vienna Circle Manifesto, Mauro Muzzi's homepage on logical positivism. Notes, cp. The partition into a Euro Vienna Circle a Euro and a Euro e Periphery a Euro and Stadler 2001. From 1926 to 1933 there were occasional meetings of Wittgenstein with Schlick, Weismann, Carnap and Feigl. cp. Stadler 2001, chapter on Wittgenstein and the Vienna Circle, 422-441. On Popper and the Vienna Circle, cp. Stadler 2001, 453-473. cp. Star paragraph LTZNE Ubel 2006, LIILXXIX. cp. The Phases in Stadler 2001. C 579-580 for an overview. Wittgenstein's Vienna, New Edition, Elephant Paperback, 1996. cp. Frank 1949, Stadler 2001, Bull 2000. The expression goes back to Rudolf Haller, Der erste Wiener Kreis, in Fragen zu Wittgenstein und Aufzucurrency zur Zoroastrianischen Philosophie, Amsterdam 1986. cp. Stadler 2001, 143-161. Stadler 2001, 195-218. Stadler 2001, 199. Stadler 2001, 199-218. For the recording of these meetings see Brian McGuinness, Wittgenstein and the Vienna Circle, Conversations recorded by Friedrich Waismann. Trans. By Joachim Schult and Brian McGuinness. New York, Barnes & Noble Books, 1979. Stadler 2001, 219-290. For an overview of the lectures of the Ernst Mach Society 1929-1932 see Stadler 2001, 342-344. Frank 1949, 38. Edmonds, D. and Ideno, J. Wittgenstein's Poker, The Story of a 10-Minute Argument Between Two Great Philosophers, 2001, page 151. In 1934 Karl Popper a Euro-S Logic of Scientific Discovery was published in the series. For documents concerning the murder of Moritz Schlick and the trial against Nelber paragraph CKC Stadler 2001, 869-909. Only after the war in 1949 arose the Kraft Circle in Vienna, a successor to the Vienna Circle, under the leadership of Viktor Kraft, a former member of the Vienna Circle. Among the members of this circle was Paul Feyerabend. For a chronology of the immigration of the Vienna Circle see Hans Joachim Dahms, a Euro of the immigration of the Vienna Circle a Euro A, in, Friedrich Stadler, Peter Wabel, The Cultural Exodus from Austria, Vienna 1995. Star paragraph LTZNER and Bull 2006, 20. cp. Stadler 2001, 573. This list follows the presentation in Stadler 2001, 571 ff, including further bio-bibliographical information on all the persons listed. E. Nagel, Nature and Convention in The Journal of Philosophy, 26, 1929, in which Nagel discussed Reichenbach's interpretation of the theory of relativity. S. Hook, Personal Impression of Contemporary German Philosophy in The Journal of Philosophy, 27, 1930, in which Hook presented a favorable report on logical positivism. A. E. Blumberg and H. Feigl, Logical Positivism, A New Movement in European Philosophy in The Journal of Philosophy, 28, 1931. cp. Thomas Bull, Vienna Circle, The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Edward N. Zalter, URL =. On the Historical Background of the Manifesto, see Stadler 2001, 334-339. The Scientific Conception of the World. The Vienna Circle in Sarka, Sartre, 1996, pages 331 Euro hereinafter VC, VC pages 329, VC pages 330, ABC VC pages 339, VC pages 339, VC pages 339 Euro 340, VC pages 328, Carnap, The Elimination of Metaphysics, in Sarka, Sartre, Cit. p. 30.